So last Saturday, I finally got around to reading this book, Socrates Meets Jesus. And in the book, Socrates asks if there are any people in this current modern society who worship the stars, or who are tempted to worship the stars. And I guess that's the inspiration for this question this week. So my question is, have I ever really been tempted to worship something other than God, or something in nature other than God? And by worship, I don't mean devote my time to, or think about, or devote myself to in that way. That way I definitely have been tempted to worship things other than God. But I mean actually worship, like lay down before and worship this thing. And I think that the answer is no, that I've never really been tempted to worship something other than God. However, I don't think that's a good thing. I feel like if I really saw, or was really able to see, the beauty of the stars or the beauty of the world around me, that I would want to worship it, and I would be tempted to worship it, because the world is so filled with what God has made, or is what God has made, and it's such an expression of, at least in some sense, who He is, that if I really was able to see it, I would be tempted to worship the trees, or other people. And I think the closest that I've ever gotten to wanting to worship something other than God was other people. But the most it's ever come to is devoting my time to it, or thinking about other people instead of God. So I feel like I have never really wanted to worship something other than God, but it's from the smallness of my understanding of how wonderful the things that I could worship really are. So this kind of connects with something I was thinking about, asking a question about a few weeks ago, but I moved on to something else. About pantheism, or God being in everything. And how it makes sense to me in some way, or I can see why it appeals to people, or why people believe in pantheism. Because everything in the world is separate from God, but it comes from Him. So it does have a kind of godness to it, though not to be heretical or anything. So I feel like my perspective is so small that the reason I've never been tempted to worship these things is because I just am not big enough to see the beauty in them. And that hopefully the way it works is the closer I am to God, or the more sanctified I am, the more able I am to appreciate beauty. Like, at this camp I went to at Wheatstone, the mentor that I had, Father Micah, he loved opera. And he said opera was the highest form of art that human beings have been able to create. That it is the best they can possibly create. And on one of our last meetings together as a small group, he played for us some opera. It's a good 10 minutes over some loudspeakers. And I was able to appreciate it, but only in this very small way. And I feel like I don't think that I'm able to appreciate opera as much as it should be. That the problem doesn't lie with the thing, but it lies with me. I think I've gotten really distracted in this video, but I think it's okay.
Snorkel.
Also, did you notice the cactus above my head? I don't know where that came from.